The Los Angeles sun scorched the street, a relentless furnace that seared Hannah's skin as she stood by her rickety food cart. 7 months pregnant, sweat dripped from her brow, soaking her faded dress as she arranged banana fritters with trembling hands. Her belly ached, a constant reminder of the child she'd sworn to protect, while her past clung like a shadow she couldn't escape. The city's hum, horns blaring, voices clashing, felt like a pulse until a scream of tires tore it apart, followed by a sickening crunch that silenced the crowd. A man lay broken in the road, blood pooling beneath his shattered frame, his gold watch glinting like a cruel taunt in the sunlight. The crowd stood paralyzed, their murmurs cold, detached, like spectators at a tragedy. Hannah's heart thundered, her baby kicking as if urging her to move. She could stay back safe, unseen. A nobody vendor shielding her unborn child from the world's cruelty. But a spark flared within her, a defiant leap of courage born from a mother's love and a refusal to let death claim another soul. She stumbled forward, clutching her belly, and dropped to her knees beside the stranger. Her apron became a bandage, pressed hard against his bleeding skull. "You're not dying on me," she whispered fiercely, her voice a lifeline in the chaos. In that reckless, heart-stopping moment, Hannah wasn't just saving a stranger, she was rewriting her fate, binding herself to a family of unimaginable power and a love she'd long buried to protect her heart. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting a sterile glow over Hannah as she slumped in the waiting room, her hands stained with the stranger's blood. Her body screamed from the effort of dragging him into a tricycle, her belly tight with cramps that made her wince. She stayed, though, needing to know he'd survive. Nurses rushed past, shouting, "Code red, road accident, critical condition, no ID." She'd found nothing on him, only the weight of his limp body etched in her memory. Her breath hitched, her mind replaying the moment she'd knelt in the street, her hand shaking as she pressed her apron to his wound. She'd ignored the stares, the whispers, the pain in her swollen ankles. Now, exhaustion threatened to pull her under, but she fought it, her hand resting on her belly where her baby kicked, grounding her. A roar of engines shattered the hospital's quiet. 8 black limousines screeched to a halt outside, doors slamming as bodyguards in dark suits spilled out, earpieces crackling with urgency. An elderly man, sharp in a tailored suit and gripping a cane, stepped forward, his voice slicing through the chaos. "Where is my grandson?" he roared. All eyes turned to Hannah, the pregnant vendor who defied death to save him. A chill ran through her, her pulse quickening. Who was this man she'd pulled from the abyss? Her baby kicked harder, as if sensing the seismic shift in her world. Months earlier, Hannah's life had been a different kind of storm. In a Las Vegas club, neon lights pulsed red, blue, and violet, casting jagged shadows over her cashier's booth. At 22, her pale skin and almond eyes hid a fierce spirit beneath her long-sleeved uniform, a shield against a world that demanded too much. "Dance, Hannah!" her coworker Serena teased, pouring iced tea into plastic cups. "You'd make a fortune with that face." Hannah shook her head, fingers flying over the register, her dimple flickering in a forced smile. "Not my world, Rena. I need control, not chaos." She watched dancers shed glittering costumes for cash, men slipping bills into straps, their eyes hungry. She'd never sell her body, no matter how broke she was, no matter how the rent loomed or hunger gnawed. But one night, a grape juice box left in the pantry changed everything. It tasted bitter, burning her throat. Her head spun, her limbs grew heavy, and the world blurred into a haze. The floor manager's voice cut through. "Drunk? Clock out." Stumbling into the pre-dawn chill, she nearly collapsed, the Vegas lights spinning like a cruel kaleidoscope, until strong arms caught her. A tall man, deep eyes, reeking of alcohol but steady. "Miss, you okay?" he asked, his voice soft but slurred. Words failed her as darkness swallowed her whole. She woke in a hotel room, naked under a thick duvet, panic searing her chest like a blade. Water ran in the bathroom. A man was there, unseen. Her heart raced as she grabbed her clothes, bag, and a stray ID from the nightstand, fleeing before he emerged. On the subway, her hand shook as she studied the ID. Julian Acierro, handsome, corporate, tied to a logo of wealth and power. "At least he's not bad-looking," she muttered, a bitter joke to mask the shame clawing at her. In her cramped East Oakland room, she collapsed on her worn mattress, silent tears soaking the pillow. She couldn't piece together the night, but the violation lingered, a wound she couldn't name. She vowed to wait for a man who respected her, not some rich stranger who'd left her broken. The club wouldn't let her forget. "You left with a customer," the manager sneered, his eyes cold. When a drunk VIP tried to kiss her, his breath sour, she slapped him hard. "You're fired," the manager spat. Hannah walked away, her dignity battered but intact, her heart heavier than the city itself. Weeks later, a pregnancy test hit like a fist to the gut. Nausea, missed periods, breast soreness. It was Julian Acierro's child, from a night she couldn't fully recall. Alone, jobless, judged by neighbors in her East Oakland complex, she whispered to her belly, "Just us, baby. I'll be enough." She scraped by, washing neighbors' clothes for a few dollars, eating stale bread and instant coffee, ignoring the whispers that branded her a failure. Miss Terry, her elderly neighbor with kind eyes, saw the test one day. "You're pregnant," she said softly, her voice a bomb. Hannah's tears answered, spilling over as she nodded. Miss Terry lent her a food cart to sell banana fritters and noodles, a lifeline in the storm. The work was grueling, the sun brutal on her swelling belly, but each sale was for her child, each step a promise to survive. She pushed the cart through scorching streets, her hands calloused, her heart resolute, ignoring the stares of passers-by who saw only a pregnant woman struggling alone. That fateful afternoon, when she saved the man, she didn't know it was Julian. In the hospital, Don Julio approached, his cane tapping the floor, his voice thick with gratitude. "You saved my grandson, Julian Acierro," he said, his eyes glistening. Hannah's heart stopped. The man from that night, her baby's father, lay in the ER because of her courage. Don Julio, unaware of their history, studied her sweat-soaked dress, her blood-stained hands, and her swollen belly. "You're pregnant, yet you risked everything to help him," he said, awed. "Come stay with us until you give birth. You need rest, safety." Hannah hesitated, her pride warring with her desperation. Her baby needed more than she could give alone. She nodded, not for ambition but for survival, for the child kicking inside her. The Acierro mansion was a world apart, marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, gardens blooming like paintings, the air scented with luxury candles. Hannah felt like an imposter, her worn backpack clashing with the opulence. Don Julio treated her like family, offering fresh milk, fruit, a room with a bed softer than anything she'd known. She couldn't sit idle, though, and spent afternoons on the veranda mending her old clothes, her needle-threading memories of struggle. "You bring light to this house," Don Julio said over coffee one morning, his smile warm. They talked of her cart, her life on the streets, and he listened as if her world mattered. But Julian, recovering from the accident, was a shadow. One night, under the chandelier's soft glow, he saw her on the veranda, her silhouette framed by moonlight. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cold, distant. Her heart sank. He didn't remember the club that night or her. She clutched his ID, hidden in her bag, unable to confess she carried his child, the truth too heavy to speak. As her due date neared, Hannah's days in the mansion were a strange blend of comfort and unease. She'd lie awake, listening to the quiet hum of wealth, wondering how she'd raise her child alone. The baby's kicks grew stronger, a reminder of her purpose, but the secret of Julian's paternity gnawed at her. She saw him in passing, his arm in a sling, his face pale but sharp, his eyes avoiding hers. She wanted to hate him for not remembering, but his quiet presence stirred something she couldn't name. One morning, as she folded laundry, a sharp pain gripped her belly, labor striking early in the mansion's grand hallway. She gasped, clutching the wall, her vision blurring. Julian appeared, still weak but alert. "Hannah!" he shouted, catching her as she collapsed. "I've got you!" He carried her to the car, his voice steady despite his own injuries, and sped to the hospital. In a haze of pain and fear, Hannah gave birth to Asher, a healthy boy with eyes that mirrored Julian's. Don Julio arrived with bouquets, calling Asher his great-grandchild, oblivious to the truth. Hannah smiled weakly, her heart torn between joy and the secret she carried. Julian began to change, lingering in the nursery, watching Asher with a tenderness that confused Hannah. He brought a stuffed dinosaur one day, placing it in the crib. "When I'm with you both, something feels whole," he said softly, his eyes searching hers. Her heart ached. How could she tell him Asher was his? She wanted to, but fear stopped her. Fear of his rejection, fear of disrupting his life, fear of her own shame from that night. Don Julio noticed her quiet strength, inviting her to coffee daily, sharing stories of his youth, his lost son, Julian's father. "You're like family now," he said, his voice kind but firm. Hannah nodded, but the weight of her secret grew heavier, especially as she watched Julian with Asher, his hands gentle, his smile rare but real. Then Valeria Osta arrived, a supermodel and Julian's fiancée, her presence a storm that filled the mansion with tension. "Julian, baby," she purred, her confidence commanding every room. She spoke of wedding plans, her voice dripping with entitlement. Hannah overheard Julian's hesitant reply. "A lot happened while you were away." The words stung, but they weren't enough to make her stay. She felt like an outsider, a vendor in a world of wealth where she didn't belong. Heartbroken, she decided to leave. She lied to Don Julio, claiming Asher's father had returned, and fled to a small village in Quezon province. There, she sold rice cakes, sewed rugs, and raised Asher alone, her love for him drowning out the pain of leaving Julian. She'd wake at dawn, her hands sore from sewing, her back aching from pushing the cart, but Asher's smile made it worth it. She'd sing to him at night, her voice soft, promising a future she'd build with her own hands. Julian couldn't let go. He sent assistants to find her, his heart unsettled by her absence. He learned there was no other man, no reconciled father. On his wedding day, as Valeria walked down the aisle in a Manila church, news struck like lightning. Asher was in a Quezon hospital, seizing from a fever. Julian didn't hesitate. He stepped off the altar, ignoring Valeria's gasps and the media's shouts, and raced to Quezon, his wedding barong wrinkled, his heart pounding with a truth he couldn't yet name. In the hospital, Hannah stood by Asher's crib, pleading with doctors despite her empty wallet. Her son's tiny body trembled, for tubes snaking from his arm, his face pale. "Please save him," she begged, tears streaming. Julian burst in, still in his barong, sweat-soaked and breathless. He paid for everything, meds, tests, a rushed DNA test, without a word. Holding the results, he confronted her, his voice breaking. "I'm his father. Why didn't you tell me?" Hannah's tears fell as she confessed her fear, her shame, her need to protect him from obligation. "I never loved her," Julian said, his eyes locked on hers. You and Asher, you're what I was missing. He reached for her hand, his touch steady. Let me be his father. Let me love you. Hannah sobbed, the weight of months lifting. I've loved you longer than I knew, she whispered. Julian leaned to Asher, now stable, and whispered, Daddy's here, his voice thick with emotion. 6 months later, the Acierro mansion hummed with new life. Asher's giggles echoed through the halls as Julian lifted him, making airplane noises, his once cold eyes now warm with love. Hannah opened Little Miracles, a boutique selling baby clothes she designed, her old sewing kit displayed in a glass case as a symbol of her journey. Don Julio, softened by Asher's presence, spent afternoons on the floor, letting the boy crawl over him, joking, This kid will run the company someday. Valeria had left quietly, no scandal needed. Her world of spotlight, no match for the quiet love growing here. One morning, under the garden's shade, Julian pulled a ring from his pocket. Hannah, we built this family backward, baby first, love second. Will you marry me? She nodded, tears mixing with laughter, as Asher babbled between them, his tiny hands reaching for them both. Their love, sparked by a fearless leap on a burning street, had woven a family from pain, truth, and redemption. Some stories begin in chaos, raw and unpolished, but with courage and love, they find their way home.